Welcome to Conversations with Zi and Vindesh, a weekly discussion that explores common life challenges and offers practical solutions. Learn more at dharmamedia.com. That's DHARMA media.com.
Hey, welcome back, everyone, to Conversations. We've been out of commission for a few weeks, so Z, always good to be back. We're talking about free will. We're talking about the advancement of the human species. And so much of what we've seen in history is that we solve problems, we come up with new ways of doing things because we're open to different ideas. There's a free flow of ideas, there's an exchange, there's a willingness to learn. You think about the entire revolution of science and the scientific method where you are looking to disprove your hypothesis. So you go in and you've got a certain idea about how the world works, and you're looking for evidence that contradicts that so you can come up with better theories. And that's what takes our society forward. You know, that's what leads to technological innovation. That's what has allowed us to build these incredible civilizations over long periods of time. But we've hit a point, and maybe this started 15 years ago, 10 years ago. I'm not really sure. We've had that impulse for free expression on the one hand start to just hit cancel culture and almost hit cancel culture like a brick wall. So free expression is so natural. I mean, it's almost inseparable from democracy. You think about the Bill of Rights, and freedom of speech is the first right in the Bill of Rights. It's central to civilizations being able to advance, to people feeling like they've got a voice in the system, to people feeling like they can advance their own condition. But somehow we've gotten to a world where now there's tremendous pressure to conform. And even though nominally we have freedom of speech, it becomes very hard sometimes to speak against the dominant narratives because you can be canceled, you can lose your job, you can become a pariah. And with social media, that can happen overnight. Also, you don't necessarily know what the standards are because who the hell knows what is going to offend someone else or some other group of people. You don't even know who these people are who are coming out and canceling you. So there's no way to really control the response that someone else has except to go along with the crowd, except to never say anything interesting. And that leads to a very dangerous situation because we end up going down this path of groupthink where, number one, it's just a lot less interesting to be alive. We don't have anything interesting to say, nothing novel to contribute, nothing to debate. It's, okay, let's just go along. And if we find anyone who's got a different point of view, let's shout them down. Let's talk about how terrible they are. They're devil worshippers. They murder children, whatever it is. We're just going to shut them down and silence them and sling accusations. So life becomes less interesting. And there's no check. There's no check on complete insanity because if you think about policy and policy being a function of thinking, if there's no check on thinking, no opposing point of view, we can go in whatever crazy direction. We can start wars. We can annihilate different groups of people. We can basically lead ourselves into Armageddon, and no one has the capacity to speak up against that. Or for the people who are sensing that something is wrong, they're too afraid, so they're hiding in the shadows. So this is a very dangerous time. And I look at the Z, it's just bizarre, honestly. I mean, some days I wake up and I wonder, what the hell happened? I feel like I'm living in some alternate reality where you can't even say basic things. You can't even speak about right and wrong in the way that we commonly understand it. You think about ethics across societies and religions and things like the value of human life, things like you don't want to kill other people, things like you should be compassionate. And if you try and raise these topics in today's environment, someone's going to shout you down and they're going to tell you that you don't understand the situation and you might get canceled. You might lose friendships. Someone might violently attack you. I mean, with tensions running as high as they are, violence is increasing. There was that 6-year-old boy in Chicago who was murdered because some crazy, I think it was the landlord, someone who'd been absorbing all of this hate, which is cranked out by the media and the politicians, and just lost it and murdered this 6-year-old child and almost stabbed the child's mother to death. So some really horrible things going on. And the topic for today, Z, is maybe where do we go from here? You know, if free will requires free thought, advancement requires that we challenge each other, that we debate each other, that we're open to new ideas. But if we become as tribal as we have become, it just leads to number one, conflict, because we're always battling some other group of people. It means that we waste a tremendous amount of energy and resources in that fight. And it's really a missed opportunity because we have the opportunity to connect with other people, engage with them, see different points of view, move forward, come up with new ideas that we haven't thought of before. But all of that is put aside because we're just so dogmatic and so ideologically driven. And so let's start over there, Z. I mean, that's just my assessment of what's going on, but maybe you can give us some of your thoughts. How do you feel about what's happening right now?
For all of our listeners, we have this concept of opting out. Just, I don't want to go left or right. I just want to take that middle road and get the hell out of here. I'll take a dirt road. I'll take the high road. I'll take the low road. Just a lot of this stuff that's going on, that has been going on, that has led us to where we are. You can really kind of predict the decline of the human condition. And at some point, we can't all play victim. Maybe we acknowledge our role in it, and in acknowledging that, the best thing we can do is withdraw from what's going on. It's like having a bar fight or mob violence. You're at a sporting club or a sports bar, and there's a big bar fight, and they say there's a mass of people fighting, and you're part of the mass. How about just pull yourself out, and then maybe somebody else pulls themselves out, so that harmony and sensibility has a path. So I have so many troubling thoughts about everything that's going on in the world, but at the same time, I can see a way through it, and it won't be with the masses. It won't be with the normal. It'll be something extraordinary, something out of the norm, and it deals with the idea of those people who are seeking to have free will and free thought. There's a scientific article published recently that asked the question, do we really have free will? Or are we living on a set of programs and indoctrinations that we are highly predictable? And they leave that question there, but I have my own view of it. I think that it takes a lot of work to free yourselves from the chains of dogma, indoctrination, and preset ideologies about life that were maybe bestowed upon you by your parents or your group that you're associated with or whatever. And in order to have free will, there's a risk associated with it. As you know, in this day and age, if you have an opinion that isn't promoted by mass media, you could lose your livelihood, your job, you can be ostracized, you can be socially marginalized just for thinking for yourself. We use the whole COVID, Kofifi thing as an example. Let's say you believe the people, you believe Big Pharma, you really trust Big Pharma. You've seen people get sick. You saw that, and Big Pharma comes to the aid. Can you accept that that's your experience and not somebody else's? Can we really accept and think, I appreciate what you've gone through, but it wasn't my experience? Because we do it anyway. We look at suffering through the lens of our group, right? And the more you have an attachment to your group, the more you're blinded to other groups or even the humanity of other people. So in the Congo, there was a guy named King Leopold. And he did all manners of atrocities to people that became a normal part of the culture, quartering people, cutting arms, legs off children to promote work from their parents. It was such a common feature that even people who raised in that culture would abuse each other that way. They didn't distinguish, they just saw it. So you still see people in the Congo with arms missing, just extraordinary, brutal punishment for minor failings. It's part of the culture. But in order to instill that in the culture, millions died, millions and millions. We don't care if it's not our group. Right now, as we're making electric cars every day, hundreds of thousands of children are dying in mines, open air silt ponds, all kinds of things. And as we cruise around in our latest electric car, feels great. I got one. Just feels great. But as I drive that car, I'm always picturing my children dead under the floor. Because it just could easily be my kids. And I learned to adjust to that. I adjust my morality. And now they've taken the word sustainability. It means nothing anymore. It means sustainability within your eyesight. It looks good for you. Bamboo clothes, bamboo shoes, bamboo straws, solar this, solar that. At what cost? At what cost to who? So let's not pretend that we have general compassion as the Dalai Lama requested of us. We have particular compassion. Let's all say that and begin the process of mental liberation. Because with this project we're doing, Vin, this Dharma Media project, this opt-out, dispassionate observer, all the catchy phrases we have for what we're doing, our mission was to mitigate human suffering. That's our mission. What humans are we talking about? I'm talking about anybody that resonates with my word, any part of our community. We have a really wonderful community. We have people from every background, from every ethnic group known to man that would consider each other family and friends. Kiko's been visiting. He organized a workout with a bunch of young fellas from all over. And we just had a great day together. And that's the world that I try to live in. Yet I'm very aware of what's out there. I'm aware how it affects us. So we found ourselves in a place where we can't have discussions. And maybe we can find a new way to do it. Maybe we should announce our biases the minute we walk in the room. And then we can know how to adjust our communication with each other so we can have that balance between virtue and harmony. Virtue, you would tell the truth. You would speak freely. You would practice freedom of speech. Harmony means to purse your words. Be careful what you say around people. Don't expose what's in your heart. Don't really share what's in your mind. Lie, lie, lie for the sake of harmony. That's one path we could take. But we also know that if we take that path, there's no room anymore for real deep intimacy and connection, because when you're close to people, sometimes you have to have the talk. What is the talk? You got to get real. You got to get down in the dirt with each other. You got to do your Upanishad moment, right? Where let me tell you about where I come from, where I'm about, and what's going on in my life. That allows you to be closer to whoever you're around. When people share their deepest self, that's who they really are. But if you're saying, don't give me your deepest self, give me the surface of you. Don't give me the chips, just give me the bag it's in. Don't give me the content, just give me the label. Then we lead this pretty empty, soulless existence. And though we're living, we're not alive. And that was a warning in the Vedas at the twilight of the Kali Yuga. Half of humanity would be the walking dead. For those of us who want to walk in this short, beautiful life, that we would fight for every breath we could take. Let's kind of figure out a way we can navigate this kind of crooked road. And as the Tao said, the crookedest road is often the straight. The straightest path is often crooked. And here's our moment. We went through the pandemic. We got to the point where there are now forced vaccinations. What do you mean forced vaccinations? You cannot take it, but you won't be allowed to go to work. Your kids won't be allowed to go to school, and your parenting will be questioned. What if I don't trust the government that for the last at least in my lifetime, have lied about every war they've ever been in. The Gulf of Tonkin in Vietnam was a lie. Kenny Burns did a documentary hearing the President of the United States lie while he's running for President Nixon to keep the war going so he would have a better chance at the election. Found out that's a lie. Then fast forward, there were all kind of covert operations. The war on drugs, the U.S. brought the drugs in. The Sandinistas were being funded by whoever. The Iran-Contra were these very same people were bringing drugs into the United States to fund illegal wars and displace millions and millions of people in South America. Those very same people are railing and yelling about why are immigrants trying to get in the country. Well, you destroyed their government. You destroyed everything that made a place livable under the guise of protecting U.S. interests, and not one U.S. citizen was affected or threatened by anything going on in another country thousands of miles away. It's a big world. There's plenty of room for every kind of person. But you believe them. Then they told you that you had to go to the Middle East, which is, again, not even true. The Middle East is not the Middle East. It's North Africa. But just saying Africa sounds scary. It just sounds too black. So we'll say the Middle East to make it sound better. It's actually North Africa. Just like North America, it's still America. Just like North Philly, it's still Philly, right? Just like South Bronx, it's still friggin' New York, you know? So they do a little bit of this kind of wordsmithing, this word salading, I call it. And words are very powerful because it affects you a certain way. The way you say something. Was it a terrorist or was it a commando? Was it a hero or was it a scoundrel? It's all words. It has no basis behind it other than to frame a picture for you. So they go and kill millions of innocent people in Iraq under the guise of you're either with us or you're not. Guys, remember that? You're either with us or you're not. 9/11, you're either with us or you're not. A country with all sorts of intelligence power. The people knew that the people had nothing to do with it. But it was an opportunity to displace leaders at that moment, to enrich somebody at that moment. So we have to follow the money. I'm not sure who it was, but people get wealthy.
Probably the Bushes.
And whoever else they're affiliated with. So you commit war crimes, what they call war crimes. It's a strange thing because the only people they ever imprison or punish for war crimes are people in very small countries that have no power. If you're in a large country and have power, you're completely immune. And actually, I think the U.S. isn't even signed up for the Hague or the International Criminal Court. They don't even acknowledge it, except to send other people there that are not affiliated with the U.S. So what you guys hear where I'm going with this. If you've lied to me all the time, if the media collapsed, I remember NPR, National Public Radio, became National Pentagon Radio, and they've never recovered that. NPR used to be local radio, subscription radio, not subscription, but they had donors, and they would just tell the news, here's one side of the story, here's the other. Now we've given you as much as we can. Now you figure out what you want to take out of a story. They don't do that anymore. They promoted the war in lockstep with everybody else. Comes out a few years later, these people had nothing to do with harming citizens of the West. Nothing to do with it. They go, oops, my bad, million dead, city collapsed, everything. And people have to remember, when you kill a family member, you alter the path of a family for generations. When my dad was murdered, we had to move, change, do so many different things happen, split up. All manner of things happen. Just take one family and there's an atrocity committed by one member, and then you have all the emotional trauma associated with it. Anybody who's lost a loved one to violence or horror, your life doesn't just get back on track after the funeral. It just doesn't work that way. So you multiply that to the 10th or 1000th power, right? And you go and you do this. This stuff was done to these people. And you don't give a damn. Why you don't give a damn? Because they're not on TV. They don't look cute. And they show pictures of little kids with flies in their nose. They're dressed dirty. Why don't they improve their life? My life is so good. So I don't really care about them. That's great. So let's not even pretend to care. And then another thing happens, right, in some other place, and it looks barren. The people are walking barefooted across the desert. Maybe Somalia, somewhere they call them skinnies. We'll go to Somalia, blow up some people. Then they shoot your helicopter down, and it's such a big deal, you make a movie about it. And these people are really bad because you know what? They shot a helicopter down. You know what makes them super bad? Is they resisted and they defended themselves. That's what made them really bad. That made them really bad, is that you fought back. What would you do? And then you can't even imagine hypothetically, what would you do if you were going through this and you had a group that was well armed, well conscripted, had large support raining down on you? So Somalia is it's a hellhole to everybody. They tell you, but apparently people want to live there and they're happy. Iraq, a hellhole, but apparently the people live there, they're pretty happy. Then let's find the next hellhole. Or how about this? How about them telling you that China's your enemy? Well, when I was a kid, they said you didn't stand a Chinaman chance. They used to have a song, Ching Chang Chinaman, sitting on the fence trying to make $1 out of 15 cents. That was a kid's chant when I was a kid. That's what they used to say. But now you're telling me 60 years later that the same China is constantly prowling around and trying to attack you? And you can't wait. The U.S. really needs to gear up for what's coming to China, and they need to save Taiwan from who? But you keep going for it. We keep going for it because we've lost the ability to question, and the liability to questioning is so high. Like you can lose your job. You can lose your safety and serenity. You can lose your children because you don't believe in what everybody else is blindly believing in. And one of the healthiest things for humans to do is to have a factual assessment of their environment. There was a brain study that talked about the more primitive part of the human brain takes reality as reality is. That's a shark in the water, period. The higher parts of the brain can create illusions and override it, but not before it produces tremendous amount of stress reactions in the body. There is an alligator coming at me. Oh, no, it's not. It's just a wonderful little toy lizard. No, it's an alligator. You're in Florida. Get the hell out of here. But we have been able to corrupt our own minds to deny that part. That doesn't make us healthy. It makes us delusional and mentally imbalanced. And it's not good for our health. There are fast cars moving on the freeway, but even though I haven't ran since high school, I think I can dart across the freeway and dodge cars. Your brain will paralyze you. And it takes a tremendous amount of brain energy to override a survival algorithm. And in that, you become more toxic, more dysfunctional, more unhealthy. So we want to really get a sense of what is real and what is not real, so that we can just live our life as long as we can, as healthy as we can, for however long time we have on this planet. So as I go with this, Vin, I'm just thinking, you watch the news, and you see the things going on in the so-called Middle East, which is North Africa. Very important to understand, it is Africa. Africa. It's not Iceland. It's not Russia, right? It's not Kazakhstan. It's Africa where this is going on. And you have different divisions of the same religion, Abrahamic beliefs. It can't be discussed. I'll leave it right there. You can't discuss it. Let us just witness. And everybody weigh, take your weights and measure. Weigh a life for a life. And then count it up. See what's going on. You know what I'm saying, Vin?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. It seems pretty obvious, pretty rational, but I feel like that rational train has left the station a while ago. And yeah, say that again, Z.
It doesn't exist anymore. That died with COVID.
Yeah, it's been interesting because if I just look at the last 5 years, and that's not even counting what's gone on before, our society has changed so rapidly in the last 15 or 20 years. But if you look at the last 5 years, it's reached warp speed. You know, we started with COVID. As you're saying, there was no ability to push back, no ability to question government policy or question vaccines. And there were all these fact-checking organizations that came out and contradicted you if you had the wrong view. Then it turns out that all the fact-checking organizations are owned by big corporations, and all the social media companies were taking their direction from the White House, and they were forced to de-emphasize certain narratives that contradicted the official narratives. Then it turns out that some of the things that were the official narratives were actually incorrect, and people have raised concerns about the vaccines, but now it's too late. So we're 2 years past the point where we went through this policy. So I feel like that was an initial test of censorship. Again, the censorship had been increasing over time, but maybe that was the first really significant test. And then we go from there right into Russia, Ukraine. I feel like that took everything to the next level because, again, it was such a one-sided narrative about how Putin is so evil and we just have to save these Ukrainian people. And what was interesting to me, Z, is that not just history, but recent articles were completely erased. I mean, there was evidence that was out there that was completely ignored. So, for example, Putin said that he wanted to go into Ukraine to denazify Ukraine because there are Nazis in the government and in the army. And this was just ridiculed. So this statement, you look at the mainstream press and they would always put that in quotes. So every time they mentioned Putin's rationale, they would have denazify in quotations just to point out how absurd of a contention it is. Like, who would believe that Ukraine is run by Nazis, Zelensky is Jewish? But if you actually did some research and Googled, I mean, all this stuff was extremely well documented. You had people who were Nazis who murdered 100,000 Jews in World War II, who achieved the highest, or who earned the highest award that Ukraine had to offer. So this guy named Bandera in 2011, or up until 2011, he was called the hero of Ukraine. That's Ukraine's highest award. And he was responsible for the murder of 100,000 Jewish people. And then you take a look at the army, and there were all these white supremacist battalions that were co-opted by the army. I mean, it's like, can you imagine over here if the army started recruiting people from the KKK amidst everything happening with Black Lives Matter? It would just be insane, but that was actually happening over there. And you could find this documented not in weird conspiracy theory social media sites, but Time Magazine, Newsweek. It was all out there, but we just pretended like it didn't exist. And then you had people who were condemned for what they did not say. So it wasn't even that they said something offensive. It was that they refused to come out and condemn Putin, and they were fired. So you had this guy who was the conductor of the Munich Philharmonic. He lost his job because he refused to condemn Putin. And I was like, wow, this is taking things to a new level. This is beyond cancel culture. I don't know what the term is for it, but now we're canceling people because they're not saying what we want them to say. It's like another step in the direction of thought police and controlling what someone thinks and just forcing submission to the central narrative. And of course, we get to today, and with everything going on in the world, you're seeing the exact same thing. People are being condemned because they're not making statements, or they're making statements, but they're not making the right kinds of statements. It's like, how many concessions do we need to extract? How much fealty do we have to force? And it just leads, Z, to a few of the things that we've already been talking about. I mean, it's going to lead to a stifling of debate. But under the surface, I think it also leads to resentment. Just on principle, I mean, if someone tells me to believe something or acknowledge something, if they tell me a couple of times, yeah, sure, maybe I'll listen to it. But if they keep on shoving this down my throat, eventually I'm going to be like, fuck off. You know, maybe I was for you in the past, but just the fact that you're harassing me now is starting to annoy me. And it's starting to drive me away from you. So you got to have the opposite effect of what you intend. And the whole thing depends on the continued suppression of free thought, free expression. If you can control it for long enough, or if you can wipe out the people who've got a different kind of view, then maybe this thing survives. But there's a lot simmering under the surface. And of course, we see that today. I mean, there are protests around the world. Even in the United States, the situation is extremely polarized. People are taking very strong positions in one direction or the other. There's the violence that we talked about. And we're just getting to a point of complete intolerance. So I agree with what you're saying. I mean, I look at this honestly, I'm confused. It's a little bit sad. It's mainly just crazy. I'd sent you that George Carlin video today, some old clip, which was circulating on social media. And he said that he gave up on humanity a long time ago. And he was talking about how with individual people, he loves individual people. He can connect with them. There's something beautiful about people. I forget the exact words he used, but he almost said things like, there's a certain divinity you can see in people if you look closely enough. But as soon as you get into groups, the whole thing breaks down. And it doesn't even have to be big groups. It could be groups of 5 people or 10 people. And they start separating themselves, and you get into tribalism, and you get into hatred. And he said, you know what? I stopped caring. I gave up caring what happens to humanity because it's ridiculous. The behavior is insane. It's nothing that I can control. It's nothing that I want to participate in. He's actually the original dispassionate observer. He said, I'm just going to sit back and watch it happen without being emotionally invested in the outcome, which maybe is the right way to roll. I mean, maybe that's the best that we can do. Just sit back and watch it play out. Don't get involved in the drama on one side or another. And as you're saying, Z, be careful about who you engage with, because you can only have certain conversations with certain people, and you need maybe more awareness. You need more limits, more barriers than you had in the past. And there's certainly a cost to that, because it shrinks the circle of people you can deal with. It's going to create more anxiety. You have to double check yourself before you say anything. It pushes people apart, so we all form our own little bubbles. It affects the exchange of ideas. But maybe that's just what we have to do in today's society. So those are some of my thoughts.
Yeah, as you're talking, Vin, I think about just the work that we do here at the Institute, people getting well, going through health stuff, just trying to reduce or mitigate that suffering. We meet in a common place with these common ideas and really work together. But knowing we live in a time now that no matter what good we've done with each other, that we can be torn apart based on an opinion, observation, or view. And this is really different, and it's troublesome, and I believe that through that troublesome we'll find a solution. I think about when I hear things and people complaining about death, despair, horrible things that go on. I always wonder, when do we choose what's our horror? Like, okay, this person did a mass shooting. It's okay, no big deal. Every day in America, I think there's like a few hundred shootings. I think that's the stats, right? Then just a few hundred shootings every day, just random acts of gun violence. But nobody cares. I don't care until it hits home. Isn't that what they always told us? It's different when it hits home. And it'd be a good exercise for us to see home as this little planet we live on and we share. For some reason, even to the last breath, it seems hard for us to do that. Religions have brought us they brought us more harm than good. Almost every war being waged that is sponsored by the military-industrial complex has a religious underpinning, a superstition associated with it. And all religions are superstitions. Nobody in their right mind believes these ancient books are facts. I love spirituality, and I'm a person who is constantly studying religion. I love the philosophy. I love the lessons in there. But I don't believe that that there's a flying elephant or whatever it is, or somebody said this way back when, and then that's who it is, or you're born into a family, and because of that, you have the key to destiny. These sound like Harry Potter things to me. I do love some of the philosophies and the ethics and ethos that are presented in there, and in a nice poetic way that they're able to do it so we can enjoy our quest for understanding that cannot be seen. Yet it's so depressing in one way when you sit back and you see humanity get outraged by one thing and not another. How we can never look at causality. Nothing happens, but it's not things aren't happening by these wars are not accidents. They're not one day an atrocity happens. These are years and years and years of the alchemy of horror being pressure cooked until it can manifest itself. You go to these inner cities and you see abject poverty, crime, and poor education. If you mix that in a bowl and let it heat up, what do you think would happen? It would be an explosion. What about dumping endless waste into our drinking water? And the first few days you can still drink the water, then after a while it becomes unpotable, undrinkable. That didn't just happen. That just didn't happen. What does this part of us think? Things just happen. It just happened. There was no causality. It was just a streak of bad luck. When did we stop thinking? Right? And for those of us who have opted out, it's good for us to think, to not take sides. What do I mean by not taking sides? Have an opinion, but be very careful of who you share your views with. Because we're now being tested. There are loyalty tests that have been designed into our interaction that will inevitably break up friendships, destroy families. Can we, that are opted out, just say, look, my life experience has been different than yours. So my lack of or excitement to invest in whatever you're doing is going to be affected by my life experiences. And my life experience with you as an individual, it may be directly good. But as I've reached and looked at life and I've done my own research, analysis, studies, or whatever, I have arrived at this view. I was having fun the other day. I was just playing around, thinking about what's going on in the world. And I asked someone, for me, I stay out of it because as an African guy, I'm hated by everybody. Everybody hates us. You could have a Palestinian and an Israeli in a bloody knife fight, and I walk in the room, they'll both come after me. That's been my experience. In Africa, of course, during the time of apartheid, when people fought back, they were considered terrorists. So when I hear the term terrorist, I think of freedom fighter, based on my experience. It may not be yours, but based on mine. I know what it's like to be treated. I remember I've told you the story. My brother and I were once in the Congo by the river helping out some fisher people, and the tourists drove by in an open Land Rover while we were squatting by the river helping them with nets and things, snapping pictures, and looked right in my face. And I said, you know, when you look at them closely, the tourist said, when you look at them closely, they look human. That's what an American tourist said about us, not knowing I could speak English and, you know, went to college here, went to military. She looked right in my face, just like Caitlin's looking at me now, and said, if you look hard enough, they kind of look human. So this is what I'm still dealing with, that issue. See, my battle is I'm guarding the Western Front of my own African ass, and I'm running out of ammo. I need more grenades and missiles just to deal with the stuff I have to do. I can't help people who decide that they want to change gender. I can't help you. I'm getting overwhelmed by all this, by the police or whoever it is, the judiciaries. If you got religious, I just can't help you right now, right? If you got whatever you got, I can't help you because I'm still fighting an old fight. I'm like Ripley in Aliens, okay? I'm still fighting the alien, all right? And it's taking every amount of energy I have. So I look at all these different groups of people that are getting together and having conflict. And maybe you can learn from the way I've handled it. Find people that are like-minded from wherever they're from, abandon titles and labels, and be a loving person. Kiko, you said something really good about the human heart, or just having a heart. What do you mean by that?
No, I was saying that we're talking about reasoning, right? If people are still reasoning or not. But I think the best reasoning that we can have is a reasoning from our heart, right? When we see something like a war, we ask ourselves, how is it possible that we are able to kill our own race, because we're all the same, right? I mean, we're human beings. This is the type of animals that we are. And we wonder why we're not able to think of it. Why are we doing it? So I was thinking, I mean, one of the best way to reason, normally, if we lost the way of reasoning, well, let's start reasoning again with our heart. Maybe that's one of the solutions for the human being to become again human.
You know, I hear what you're saying, Kiko. I think that I'll share from my experience, people dehumanize you. And that's one of the reasons it's hard for us to have a collective sense of humanity, because different teachings dehumanize people through their culture, their group, through their ideas. You see somebody that's different, whatever that means, and you decide that they don't dream. I remember a person asking me one time, did I have dreams? She's this woman I was dating from some different ethnic group. She said, do black people dream? I said, yeah, as soon as my tail goes back inside my body when I go to sleep, then I start to dream. But she had been told that. So it's easier to kill somebody that doesn't dream, that doesn't have a consciousness. It's easy to watch them suffer. And when you can relate to people, it's like that guy during the Ukraine time. He said, this is real because they're blonde hair and blue eyes. Now it's real. Now this is real suffering. He said that, one of the news commentators. Remember that? He said that. With his heart pouring with emotion. This is really important because these kids look like my kids. But if those kids look like my kids, it wouldn't be that important. That's what he just said. And he wants me to send him money. He wants me to support his cause. I can't do it. I'm spent. I can't do it. I just can't do it. The minute you dehumanize somebody, you just lost a teammate. Don't expect to ever get it back. Kiko said something. He said, the human race. We are human. I think I heard somebody in this recent conflict say, no, they're animals. Treat them like animals. Have we not heard that before within the lifetime of many people? That these people, it's easy, these when you kill these people, there's no reason to lose sleep. And you'll come up with all sorts of rationale. But you know what? If you hang out here, we got everybody coming around here, right, Caitlin? Everybody's here. Caitlin needed a little help. Everybody just showed up. Huh, Caitlin? I'm not going to put you on blast. But everybody just showed nothing but love with no hesitation. So in my little dictator way, I've created just a beautiful world, a beautiful community. And that's what I hope other people can do. But out there, man, it's ugly. It's just ugly. And the more you hear the news, the more you hate other people. It seems like it's designed that way. They're pushing us to hate one another, driving us to endless wars. And it's real crazy when people ask for more war. Do you know where more war will lead? And by the time you call it off, it's like trying to start a brush fire to clean up the forest and it gets out of control. The people that love suffering are not like us. It's erotic to them. The bloodlust, the sacrificing of life, it does something for them. They feel good. You hear all these war criminals when they're talking, all of them, they had, who was that guy? Henry Kissinger. My God, these guys sitting there, it's like Jabba the Hutt, and just loves war. Ugly, ugly human being. Just loves it.
Adrenaline, I guess.
Yeah, maybe that's what's keeping him going. Just ugly. And it feeds them. It doesn't feed the average one of us. So I hope that we can, what I want to do is just finish this up then, and free thought, striving for free will, even if we don't have it. Try and get over the wall. Try and get out of the prison. Think for yourself. Whatever conclusion you come to, acknowledge your biases, acknowledge your titling, and then add that and then extract it from the equation of reality and see where you stand. Huh, Vin?
Yeah, I think for the individual, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, for most people, they're not even going to know what the hell you're talking about. Because it's almost like the conditioning is so strong. Whatever you're taught, whatever you absorb from the people that you surround yourself by, that becomes your entire reality. So I agree with what you're saying. I think the only caveat I would make is don't expect the same of most people, because most of us aren't even aware of our biases, or maybe we don't want to be aware. You know, maybe we are aware, but we don't want to think about it that hard because it becomes uncomfortable, or even if it's not uncomfortable for us, it puts us at risk within our own communities. So it's easier to just follow along. But yes, if we do have that awareness, then check your own biases, control, as you're saying, we can adjust our decision making, our points of view, and over time we can refine our thinking. I mean, we can come up with ideas that serve us better.
Yeah, and wrapping it up again, according to science, humans flourish when they have a good sense of reality. Animals do well. And that's why when we got our head in VR, we live in an altered universe, we do not do well. We do well when we can face what is real. In order to do that, we must unveil our consciousness so that we can see the distortion of what we see. Like Kiko said, we are a human race. We are just the same. If we weren't the same, we couldn't breed with each other. We just can look somewhat different based on where you're from. But you know, a lot of people don't even see the kids don't really see the differences in people. That's what I notice about kids. They notice your character, huh, Kiko? Kids notice your character. The kids see Uncle Kiko. They see Caitlin. They see how people treat them. They don't care about your religion. Jonah asked me the other day, what is religion? I said it's fairy tales that cause people to kill one another. Just fairy tales. Just like you read Dr. Seuss. Just like you read The Habits of whatever, wimpy kid or something. He reads these books. Like Garfield. Garfield could be a god with different rules. The grand primo god or something. So it's that bad. It's that bad. And you want to say, I'm so glad we don't have a religion. Because I have all kind of friends. That's what he told me. I said, yeah. Keep it up, son. All right, Vin?
All right. Yeah, let's just do the best we can. I mean, kind of a depressing topic, but we are where we are. So hopefully we can take some of these lessons and use it to navigate everything that's going on right now.
But don't end on a bad note, Vin. It's actually...
All right.
Don't end on a bad
note. Sorry.
There is some optimism.
You want a fairy tale, Z?
No, I'm just saying, if we opt out, and for those of us who do, we have each other. Right, Caitlin? I mean, our world is good over here, man, huh? Yeah. It's right, Kiko? We just a loving world, man. If people, anybody who's ever hung out with us, we got a great little island. We just have to get more weapons to keep the other people off of it so they won't corrupt us. Okay?
Yeah, no war except for the wars we start.
There you go. I'll catch up with you soon, Vin.
If you enjoyed the show, please consider leaving us a review on Podbean, iTunes, or your favorite podcasting app. Each 5-star review helps us bring you more unique and insightful content. Learn more at dharmamedia.com. Peace.